Day 28 and 29. I'm feeling a little better. Still don't have much of a voice to speak of. But at work today, I did have to do a public speaking exercise, one that I'm going to have to do when I'm on my course. Basically, they give you a topic, and you have 10 seconds to think about what you're going to say, and then you have to talk for a minute about the topic, whether or not you know anything about it. It's basically judging your it's like the just way you present yourself public speaking wise. So are you crossing your arms? Are you using um, um, eye contact? Is there a lot of ums like what I'm doing just now? How are you gesticulating? Are you flailing, or are you using your hands to emphasize what you're saying? And I realized that I've never been good at public speaking, but since I started doing these videos, my public speaking has gotten a lot better. And one of the people that were returning from maternity leave, she had only really seen me in the last maybe 2 weeks, where I was unwell mentally and then unwell physically. So she had no idea that I was able to actually speak with and project and be, I guess, officerly in my conduct. And that was a pretty sweet moment to be like, hey, I can actually do this. It's becoming more and more clear that I'm going to be able to fake my way through this course, fake my way through this trade, and maybe, like, fake it until you make it. I'm not entirely sure. What I am sure of is that I'm starting to lose focus, and that I have not been to church in the last 2 weeks. Maybe, yeah, the last 2 weeks. I haven't been to church since the first time I went back to church, which was the first Sunday of Lent. And I have not been saying my rosaries at work. But I've also just not been communicating with the outside world. And having Winston, the dog, was very helpful in that. I didn't really need the outside world when I had him to take care of. But today, Winston is gone. I just gave him back to his owner because he got back from Asia. And now, especially before my roommate came back, I noticed that there was like a deafening silence in the apartment. There was no pattering, there was no whining, there was no crying, there was no snoring or attempted kisses or barking. And it made me feel like a little sad, I'm not gonna lie. But I'm also relieved that I only have to take care I only have to take care of myself now. Yeah, so that happened at work. I also visited a press organization, and that was interesting. My bonsai tree is dying. I'm a terrible plant mom. I think I've said this before, but it needs to be reiterated. And I might just lay it to rest before I go on my course, because I don't think it's gonna survive while I'm gone. It might do better if I can actually get my roommate to take care of it. But it's not his job to do that. I watched a bit of Bob Saget on the Rubin Report, and I have to admit that when they were talking about America's Funniest Home Videos, I got a little nostalgic. My brother and we used to want to record things just so it could be on America's Funniest Home Videos. But we're in Canada, so we wouldn't really be invited there or anything. It's not that it doesn't really work that way. Most competition things in the States don't really work for us. So we get to bask in all of the culture without partaking in it. And I think that's very telling of Canada in general when it comes to politics, when it comes to social occurrences. Canada sort of basks in American culture without having the foundation by which within like the foundation within which to participate in it. So we have our own faction of Black Lives Matter without a, a veritable cause for having it because we don't have a cop on black crime issue in Canada. It's just not a thing. So there's that. The kind of racism that does exist in the States, I mean, it exists everywhere. And recently there was a young black child that went missing. And what's been circulating online is the rural Quebecois responses, which was help find this kid. You'll get yourself a good slave, or things of that nature. And in all seriousness, these people actually mean it. When people talk about microaggressions, it makes me angry because there's actual racism and bringing things down to the sense where things that are meaningless become the battles that we want to fight. It makes it so that the battles that are worth fighting have so much less clout, and they're just treated as less important. And I feel like that's happening all around, where you have people that are so against identity politics, which I think everyone should be against identity politics. Like, we shouldn't organize ourselves in groups. But because they're against that, there's this whole difficulty in separating different types of actions, and different types of reactions are hard to come by because we can't separate what racism actually is. Like, there's a traditional racism which everybody is against. Everybody who has any shred of humanity is against it. I'm against racism. I don't know a single person who thinks that racism is right. What I'm finding myself sort of going back to, and I don't want to slip into that social justice part of myself, but there is something to be said for fighting a cause that's actually legitimate, but we need to decide how we're going to fight it in a way that makes it so that we can actually make change that is meaningful and that is fair. Because I personally don't think that the answer is to flip the switch and be racist to whichever group we think is perpetrating this against us. So yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that people have experienced racism in their lives, but I think that this idea of privilege is so dangerous, and I'm not the only one that thinks that. It's not an original thought. I mean, I think we're all tired of hearing it because it's something that we know to be true, but it's something that is so hard to drill into the minds of others, that the idea of treating an entire group as the enemy, it creates more enemies than you had in the first place. Why? I don't understand why. I can't really put my finger on it, but I've lived in Quebec my whole life, and I mean, apart from a few stints in Scotland and Ireland here or there, and I spent like a year in Scotland altogether, and 6 months in Ireland, and 5 months in Jamaica, maybe about 4 in Grenada. summers consecutively. Um, so I'd have like one stint of 4 months, one stint of 4 months, and then another stint of like 2. So I guess I've spent altogether, 10 months in Grenada. And the thing that rings the most clear to me is this idea that culturally we have something inherently in us. No, that's not what I mean. I'm talking nonsense. I'm getting lost in like seeing myself talk and I'm talking crap. That's not what I mean. I think that we all value our cultures and that we should value them to an extent, but we can't be blinded by blind allegiance in the pursuit of what is right. So we need to be able to acknowledge what is wrong with our cultures and say maybe, not all cultures are equal. In Jamaica, for instance, they have a very rich musical culture. They have a very rich um, religious foundation, and they have an extremely rich landscape when it comes to food, when it comes to um, landscape, like just the landscape and picturesque views and natural beauty. Jamaica is full of it, but on the social side, there is a lot of anti-homosexual sentiment. And I remember being there in 2008, and things haven't changed all that much in the minds of people that live there. But 2008, I remember listening to a mainstream radio station, and one of the talk show hosts said that they needed to get this gay disease out of the country. And the corruption with politics in Jamaica is extreme. The poverty is extreme. The health issues are critical, and they are in most of the Caribbean because there's not a whole lot of education based education about contraception. So the last time I went to Grenada, which was 2015, um, there were a few people on the island that had died of AIDS, and I'm uh, I'm 100% sure that there's going to be more in the years coming, because it's a very small island, so it becomes a little incestuous when it comes to partners. So somebody will have multiple partners and they'll have children, and they'll never get tested because there's no real way to actually do that. So while the cultures might be rich in some ways, we need to be able to critique them in order to acknowledge and identify what is wrong with them. And that is one of the things that gets me in the most trouble, which I have been criticizing Christianity for the longest time, and I still do in some factions of it. I think that being critical is essential in the betterment of ideas. We need to be able to criticize ideas to refine them and make them better. And if we can't refine them and make them better, then we should be able to criticize them because we are free to do so. The problem is that when it comes to a religion like Islam, it is impossible to have a reasonable conversation with anyone. I feel like anyone, right or left, because everybody has this sort of set of ideas or set of talking points that they use in either the defense or offense mode when it comes to Islam. I'm not a scholar in Islam, but of the things that I do know, there are some good lessons. There are some good things there. There are And there's some bad stuff. And we need to be able to criticize the bad things, because right now, whether we like it or not, we are in an ideological war with the Middle East. It's not something that we had a say in. It's not something that we chose. It's something that has happened, and because we are citizens of the nations in which we reside in the West, we have to protect our culture, because overall, our culture is superior to the culture of Middle Eastern countries, just in general. I'm not going to point out specific countries and which ones believe what and which ones believe whatever, but when I look at the whole, when I look at Muslim countries in general, Muslim majority countries in general, not Muslim people, but countries wherein Islam is a doctrine that's attached to the government, which rules over the people that reside in those countries. When I look at that, I can see that there is room for critique. Not that they're inherently bad, not that they're evil, but that there should be critique. And if people from those cultures are to live in our countries, in the countries in which we were born, brought up, and the countries that we love or don't love, but you're part of it. Even if you don't want to be, you can always try to move to the Middle East if you like it better there. But if we are living here, we have the obligation to protect the culture that I believe is the most inclusive and most equal culture, that like if it's a comparison between Canada and let's say um, Iraq or something like that. I'm no geographer. I'm not a international political minded person. I just know the broad strokes of what I know. If we're going to compare Canada to any country that views homosexuality as like against the law, or against, like if their prescribed method of dealing with homosexuality is throwing them off of roofs, then I kind of I'm gearing towards naming Canada the victor in terms of quality of life. I mean, the fact that I'm able to do this, and that I'm able to express myself, and that I still have a job, and that I still can do what I need to do is a testament to that. So I guess what I'm saying is that we all need to be able to critique ourselves, critique things that, well, we need to be able to critique ideas. We need to be able to be critics, like, just because, well, look at that Wrinkle in Time thing. The director is trying to blame racism on the fact that they have bad ratings, when in actual fact, it's just a bad film. Now, they're trying to change the game a little bit, where it's like, no, the film's not bad. You're just racist. That's not in Canada, by the way. Obviously, it's just an example. I don't want to live in a place that looks at critique as a critique of someone's ethnicity. Like, if the film is good, it stands on its own. It's good. Black Panther was fantastic. But Wrinkle in Time, even just the clips that I saw, I was like, this is shit. And you know what? When it comes out on DVD, or if I can download a bootleg version of it or whatever, I'll watch it. I'm not going to give anyone my money. That's for damn sure. But if I have some time when I'm shining my boots or something, I'll put it on in the background. That's what I did with that the Death Note movie that came on Netflix. And that was a piece of frigging garbage. What utter trash. Oh my god. I don't understand why Hollywood feels the need to make live action versions of anime. Anime is its own thing. It's like The Last Airbender. You can't make that into a live action series because anime can stretch this wide range of emotions and 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 they can do things that you can't do as a human being. Like you can have Sokka going mushy giant friend in an anime and then have him be completely serious and plan an attack. But if you did the mushy giant friend bit in an actual live action film, there's no way that anyone's going to take anything that character says seriously again. So I want Hollywood to stop making anime films like that. I want them, not anime films. Oh my god, please don't stop making anime films. I want them to stop trying to make live action versions of anime films because they're bad at it. They've never done it well. They have never done it well. And even when they try and make video game ones, like I liked Super Mario Brothers, but not because it was anything to do with the game. I just really like John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins as those characters. And who can't love Dennis Hopper? I mean, come on. So that's basically it, man. Like we need to be able to critique things, you know, like. And my criticism might not be the same as someone else's criticism, but we need to be able to agree to disagree, or to at least acknowledge facts and say, well, my interpretation is different. Okay? Because we can acknowledge that there are some bad things about Christianity, and we can acknowledge that there are some bad interpretations of things in Christianity. But I think that the bad things in Christianity that people interpret incorrectly are just that. They're just misinterpretations. But that's my opinion. And there are plenty of people out there, plenty of atheists, plenty of, of scholars in Christianity or in just Judeo-Christian religions, plenty of people that have studied it at length that could give me 1,000 good reasons why I shouldn't be a Christian. And then there could be probably an equal amount that gave me 1,000 reasons why I should be. And at the end of the day, there's not really much that logic can do to to quell beliefs, but what it can do is point out flaws. So if there are flaws, then we point them out and we reform and sort of it's almost like forming a power circle around the flaw itself and being like, we acknowledge this, but we still understand that the message itself is so great and so clear that this one area that we acknowledge to be a little bit extreme, we acknowledge that it's extreme, and we're not going to promulgate that as our primary objective or secondary or tertiary. Is that a word? Oh, that's probably not the right word. I can't think today. No, like we have to be able to understand when things are bad, and we have to acknowledge it. We have to be able to do it freely without being called a host of names. You know, like just if we could just be able to discuss things, and and if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But there's not a single argument where someone calls me a racist that changes my mind. There's not a single argument where someone calls me a bigot that changes my mind. What it does is it makes me plant my feet in so much harder, because I know that they're wrong in saying that. So then everything they say must be wrong. And that's where I'm finding that there's a separation, and that it's really hard to be neutral in things like this. It's really hard to be neutral in things like racism. It's hard to listen to opinions that are so contrary to what you believe. But I've made efforts. I even spoke to one of the, I guess he's like the leader of the Canadian National Socialist Party. That guy was a piece of work, but he basically said that his vision for Canada is to send away all of the immigrants, and then the ones that are not European looking or not white, that were born here like myself, first generation, we would be able to stay as long as we followed some rules. So, we need to be able to critique that, because that is a pretty messed up point of view. But it's a point of view, and it exists in the world. So let's find better arguments instead of just yelling racist, because I think that his ideas are sort of rooted in racism in the very generic sense. But I resisted the urge to call him racist, because basically when you call someone racist, what you're saying is, I don't have an argument for you. I'm just going to use a pejorative, because that will be effective in getting you to be quiet. But what you should be trying to do is change their mind. That's why I really like Crowder's Free Crowder. That's why I really like Crowder's segment, Change My Mind, because that's what we should be doing. We should be trying to reason with one another, even if a discussion is more productive, but a debate is better than name calling. So if we want to, I would say that dialectic would be at the top of what we would want. Debate would be the middle ground. Like, that's like the bare minimum of what we should do. And then at the very bottom, the most unproductive of things would be to just shout names, or just type names with exclamation points or all caps. That's just my 2 cents. Anyway, 28-29. Got, I guess tomorrow it will be 10 more days. So I've got 10 more days of this. And then I'm going to have to be doing this from a hotel room starting Sunday. So, hotel. Anyway, y'all, thanks for watching. And thanks for bearing with my frog voice. Au revoir.